Hello and welcome back to the Red Barrels podcast. It's been a lovely festive season, and so we haven't been recording anything. We've been living our lives, relaxing and maxing, all cool. But we're back. There were some logistical problems, so it's taken us a little bit longer than we hoped. But from now on, we're hoping to be a bit more regular, so we hope you'll join us. But for now, we're here to talk about games from a left-wing perspective. That's what we're here to do. And there aren't any special things this time. There's no awards. There's no exciting events. This is just a regular episode, and those are really the best ones, I think. It feels all homey. First thing we're going to do is introduce who's here. I'm Alex, your friendly host. But who else is here?
Hi, it's me, Ed, your less friendly co-host. Happy New Year, everyone. You don't know when this was recorded, so for all you know, that's an appropriate thing to say. But it's not, trust me, it's quite late in January.
And I'm Sophie. I'm your least friendly host. I'm a complete bitch, actually. That's why I'm not even going to wish you a Happy New Year, because I don't care. I don't care how your New Year was. That's a lie. I hope you had a good New Year. That's me.
We're entering our dark era, everyone. Only one friendly host left, and who knows how long I'm going to hang on for. But we're going to get into the games now. So, first up, you heard him. They're calling him the bad boy of the Red Barrels podcast. And I believe he's here to talk about an exciting game. Let's hear it, Ed. What is it? What is it? Come on.
So I'm talking about a relatively new game.
Sure.
Relative to the age of the universe.
Sure.
It was Christmas. It was the holiday season. And that, to me, that means RPGs.
Yeah.
So I decided to go back.
Very cozy.
To a classic. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 1.
I assume you mean Baldur's Gate 3. You just misspoken. The game that came out last year. It's not really that relevant now. But hey, we like to go into older games sometimes. So we're talking about Baldur's Gate 3, the game that came out last year. That's what you're talking about. Right?
Well, in many ways we are.
All right.
But in many other ways, no. We're talking about Baldur's Gate 1, the 1998 computer RPG.
Did they have computers back then?
From BioWare.
Oh, wow.
If it makes you feel any better. If it makes...
Sorry, looks were made about my age. I'm just sorry. It's okay. Continue, Ed. My groping. I was going to say my griping. My griping. We can put that aside, and probably you're going to cut this. But let's go. Let's roll. Boom, boom,
bit
boom.
Too friendly a co-host, some say. If it makes you feel any better, I actually played the 2012 re-release of Baldur's Gate, which is called Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, developed by Overhaul Games, which is a division of Beamdog. So I'm going to explain Baldur's Gate to you in case you are unaware of it. And if you are unaware of it, I'll be surprised. But hey. So it takes place in the Forgotten Realms D&D setting, and it runs on the 2nd edition D&D rules, which is not something I've ever experienced before. I've played D&D, but only 5th edition because I'm a young buck.
Wow.
It's a top-down, isometric third-person game where you follow your hero and a party of characters traveling across the Sword Coast after your protagonist is told to leave their hometown by their father figure with no explanation, only for their father figure to be killed almost immediately. So it's a classic RPG of the era. You roll for your stats, you get to choose your class, your race of the player character, and then there are also about 25 other characters that can join you on your journey as part of your party. And you can have up to 6 party members at once. My character was an archer that I named Robin of the Forests in honor of Robin Hood.
Very original.
Local leftist legend.
I've not heard of him.
You've probably never heard of him. Yeah. It was invented by Disney.
Famed for his furriness, that's what I've heard.
The original furry, yeah. Robin Hood. And I travelled around with a druid, a thief, a fighter, an enchanter, and a cleric. So, and the way that the game works is there's a series of towns. Each one takes about 30 to 60 seconds maybe to walk from the southernmost to the northernmost point. And between those towns are various other maps, mainly wilderness, but some of them have got mines and lighthouses. And basically how it works is you walk to the edge of a map. Say if you walk to the southernmost edge of the map, that unlocks the region to the south of you, and you can fast travel to anywhere that you've unlocked.
Right. This is unlike, say, Baldur's Gate 3, where you just have a set of very large areas that you can largely explore.
Yeah, the areas are much smaller than
It's a bit more of an open world, as you'd expect with however many years, decades of time between them.
I think 20, yeah, what was it? Yeah, it's been 27 years since this game came out.
Yeah.
We like to bring you hot off the press, off the press stuff. But yeah, it's not an open world, and each sort of smaller map area is quite a lot smaller than you would expect from something that came out in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it's not really to its detriment. And when you travel from area to area, there is a small chance that you're going to get like waylaid and possibly like attacked by a gang of wolves or something like that.
Oh, right.
So that brings me to the combat. It's like a semi-turn-based system. So the fights are happening in real time, but you can pause at any point to pick your next move for each character. And that took me quite a while to get the hang of, I'll be honest. It took me like at least about 5 hours of game time to really like get how the combat worked and like learn how to use it properly.
Yeah.
It could be because, as I said, I played this over Christmas. So my first 5 hours of this game were on my laptop at my like family's house.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't help. I wouldn't recommend this playing on a laptop. You need a big enough screen to be able to work out what's going on, read the stats, work out what the weapons do, etc.
Yeah, a lot of very small fiddly text in that game, I imagine.
Exactly. And that combat system, that was like one of the main things that this game was known for when it came out. Like this was like a novel approach to RPG combat at the time, and it was really like it was much imitated afterwards. The game took me about 30 hours to roll credits, and that was with me doing like a bit of side questing, mainly focusing on the main story though, and it could easily take you like 2 or 3 times longer than that if you really wanted to do the side quests. The main story itself, like I quite liked, especially at the start. I liked how it was told, aside from the personal mystery that I already mentioned, which was like, why did your father figure rush you out of hometown like that? Who killed him? Why? You also get caught up in like the wider social situation, which is that there's like an iron shortage, a crisis caused by a lack of iron.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the aspect of the story that like mainly interested me initially. Like that felt like a much more sort of grounded, tangible issue that I'm used to seeing from RPGs. Like,
Sure.
you know, it's not why have the dragons returned? You know, it's there's a lack of iron. Shit. What are we going to do about that? So I felt that was quite engaging.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
And you're sort of investigating that. And I'm not going to give you too many spoilers because I know the game's only just come out.
Yeah.
But relatively early on in the game, you discover that the crisis is being manufactured to some extent. Like it's being caused deliberately, and you investigate the people causing it. And that was like catnip to me. I love that bit. I was like, oh, this could be a really interesting story. Like,
We've
got social groups like manipulating the economic situation for their own advantage. You know me, I'm a lefty boy. That my ears perked up.
Yeah.
But you follow the trail of this investigation, and you eventually it turns into more of like, I would say like a generic's a harsh word, but like a more like regular high fantasy story about like a coup and gods and stuff like that. I won't go too much into it because ultimately after the intrigue of the Iron Crisis at the start, it sort of just becomes like a classic like sort of liberal story of like, make sure the good guys stay in power because those bad guys are bloody rotten grr. You know what I mean? So for me, that was quite disappointing. Like starting with this potential economic crisis, like what's causing it, what like maybe we're going to be thinking about the group's interests or like I don't know, have some sort of social analysis. The game's not interested in doing that at all. It just turned into a good guy v bad guy thing, which was less to my taste than if it had done something a bit more sort of social, I guess.
Yeah, there wasn't that much. I mean, you had the original Fallouts back then, but most games like that were, I guess, also Planescape Torment, I believe.
Yeah, that's a bit later, I think, isn't it?
But I think it's about the same time, maybe a year or two later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, having leftist critiques and stuff, I mean, who knows with the current political situation in America, we might see a rapid decline in it now. But felt like, I mean, you know, this is the heyday, the 90s, it's the heyday of neoliberalism and the end of history. So you got that a lot less in those days.
Exactly. Like I want to be fair to it. Like I thought it was a pretty engaging story, given the kind of story that it was. But I do want to point out the limitations of the story. Like, it's not surprising that those limitations exist. As you say, that's relatively typical of the genre, especially at that point. But still, playing it in 2025, as I did mainly, it was a little bit disappointing. I have played a few of the like 90s computer RPGs from that era. So I've played Fallout 1.
Oh, really?
I've played Elder Scrolls Arena, which was the first Elder Scrolls game.
That's so impressive.
I probably would not recommend Elder Scrolls Arena. And in fact, I was saying to Sophie before we started recording, I've also been playing alongside this game, Fallout 2.
Oh, really?
Which I have very nearly finished, but havened done yet. So I might talk about Fallout 2 on a different edition of Red Barrels. So stay tuned, dear listener. But compared to those games, Baldur's Gate feels like definitely more dynamic. Its combat feels like way more rich, I would say. The combat especially is like significantly improved over Fallout 2. And Fallout 2, they both came out in 1998, so I think it's like definitely fair to compare those two games directly. And it feels really dynamic because at any point you've got these 6 people that you're in control of, or I had 6. You could choose to play without anyone else in your party other than the main. I think that's what I think some people say it's optimal to play with a smaller number, but I like to have the friends, you know.
Yeah, roll the deep with the club. Yeah.
Exactly. And you could pause at any time by just hitting the space bar, and you can choose any of their skills or spells or potions or weapons or one-use items to use at any point in the combat cycle. So there are just a lot of options that you could choose for any different combat encounter. And the other thing with this game, as with a lot of those other 90s RPGs, it's not easy. Like, you start off fucking weak. Like, you're so weak. You just get bodied immediately by like any random villain or any random thing you encounter. Like a pack of wolves are going to absolutely destroy you. And also Baldur's Gate 1, it's not that long a game in terms of like how high a level you get. Comparing it, for example, to Morrowind, which came out like 5 years later. You start off in that game incredibly weak, but by the end, like if you play your cards right, you can be like a god. Yeah. Like you can like fly and you're like an all-powerful being. By the end of Baldur's Gate 1, I still felt pretty weak. Yeah. And I think that's partially because it goes directly, like afterwards, you can like move your character straight into Baldur's Gate 2 and like continue from there. And you start off in Baldur's Gate 1 as a level 1 character, and you start off in Baldur's Gate 2, I believe, as a level 7 character, which is about where I did end up. I think the cap is level 9 in Baldur's Gate 1. Anyway, so yeah, there's lots of different skills you need to keep track of, learn how to synergize them, learn when to use the one-use items, etc. And overall, I mean, I did really like the game. I thought the setting was cool as well. We said about the size of the settlements. The one exception is Baldur's Gate itself, which is sitting there from when you first open the game. Like, you can see it on your map in the northernmost point of the region, and you can see it's this like sprawling city, and it's the only place in the game which isn't just one screen. Yeah. It's like I think it's 9 screens. Wow, and it's whole screens. Yeah, it feels so much bigger than the rest of the game. It really feels like an achievement when you get there. Like, you sort of forget that 30 years have passed, and you're like, wow, this is really cool. They've made a city this big. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, the start of the game I found a bit difficult. Like, I do really like playing those really old school RPGs, but the start of them being difficult, that makes it quite hard for me to get in. Like, I don't understand the combat yet, so it's even more difficult because I'm not good at the game yet. Plus, the game's hard, and I'm less invested in the world. I'm getting bodied all the time, so it's hard to know what to do to improve yourself. And as I said earlier, it took me like maybe 5 hours to get to grips with the combat, and I reckon it took about 5 hours for me to start actually liking the game. So that's kind of an issue, and I know a lot of people really like that. I also found the very end of the game a little bit frustrating. I think maybe it's a me problem, but it was one of those things where like I could feel the end of the game. Like, I thought I was basically at the end of the game. Yeah. And then it pranked me, and like it turned out there was like another 5 hours of the game to go. Yeah. And it's just one of those things where like I was having a good time, and then I thought I'd basically finished, and then I still had the really difficult bit left to go. And that meant that the difficult bit for me was just like, it felt almost like a chore at that point. It feels like I'd already beaten the game, but I hadn't. And yeah, I found that quite frustrating. Overall, I really liked the game. There's a couple of critiques there. I've got some more critiques that I'm going to throw out, which, even though it's a 27-year-old game, maybe it's unfair. Look, I'm going to speak the truth to you guys, you know?
Man, don't sugarcoat.
My journalistic integrity
it's
knows
the
no
Sigma
limits.
male here.
I'm not friendly. I'm not evil. I'm not a villain.
He's a good-looking rebel who plays by his own rules.
I'm hearing a lot about how good-looking I am from Alex, and I frankly want to hear more.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I'm just giving our listeners what they wanted.
They can't see me, so that could be true for all they know.
We have to project an image of ourselves. And I want a leather jacket wearing bad boy for our podcast. And frankly, your opinions on whether you are that, Ed, are irrelevant. You are going to be that. I'm going to make sure you start turning up here on a 1950s motorcycle.
How do you think I got here today?
We're going to have, we're going to have audiences of teenage girls screaming when you start the podcast.
If you listen careful.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah. So I did have some like more like fundamental issues with the game now that I've sort of explained the game to people. The first is my party members. Like, there are a couple of issues with party members. The first is they just don't fucking do what they're told. And it's really annoying. So most of the like your party members can die, and like that's not a game over. Like, you can just go find other party members. But, you know, I'm loyal, boo. Like, I don't want my party members to die. Yeah. I'm trying to keep them alive. But the issue is they just charge into combat so often. Yeah. Like, normally how the fights work is your enemies sort of focus on one of your party at any given time. So especially later in the game, how the combat like flows is I'm essentially trying to manage which of my guys are tanking all the hits.
Yeah.
So there might be someone, they tank the hits for a while and now they're like a couple of hits away from death. So I'm trying to like basically cycle them out and cycle someone else into the tanking. So I send a party member away to safety. And like as soon as they walk away, they get to the place I've told them to go, and then they charge straight back in. So much of my combat at the end of the game was me pausing and like telling 1, 2, or maybe like 3 characters, 4 characters even, just constantly clicking them to stay away from the combat. And it was so frustrating. It's like I shouldn't have to be. And there's a special button you can press which makes them like guard a specific point. Apparently, because whenever I tried to use it, they just completely ignored it. And again, they would just charge straight back in. I wanted you guys to be safe. Instead, you get hit by a stray and you're dead. And I have to restart the game over and over again because they don't listen to a word that I say.
Yeah, I feel like companion AI has improved a great deal over the past 20 years. I remember back then, you play a game and like the escort mission was just the nightmare. Well, I mean, now people still aren't fans, but like back then it was just like, I played GoldenEye 64, and there are some escort missions in that, and like where fucking Natalia would just get in the way and just die over and over again. This is just like months of my teenage life gone down the drain because of her.
Escort missions. I remember those as well. I specifically remember escort missions in GTA being very hard because they would just walk into danger. And also, while you were saying that, I was thinking there's a DM listening somewhere to this podcast who's thinking, God, I wish my party could hear this, or like, I wish my players could hear this. Rushing into danger.
Actually, the AI was incredibly accurate.
Quick aside: when I played D&D when we did 5th edition, we didn't have enough players, so the DM also played a player, which I know also played, which is a bit of a no-no. Shout out to that player who might be listening. But what he really liked to do is just rush in, and we were like, he was the DM. He was the sit down DM. He played a character called Merrick, who was a cleric, and we would sit there, we'd plan out our attack, and it'd be like, and Merrick charges in. It's like, please.
I mean, I guess maybe it works if you're a DM and you can just make sure you don't die.
Yeah. The other thing is with the party members is like I spent about 30 hours with these party members, like 6 party members, for almost that entire time. But there really isn't much in terms of them having characters or any sort of relationship building or anything. Like they're just sort of there for the combat. Like occasionally they throw lines out, but there was almost literally nothing. To the extent that there was, in fact, 2 things, and I can tell you what they were. These are the only 2 moments of characterization in the whole game. So I was playing a good aligned character, but one of my party was a neutral evil character. So there were 2 incidences with them. One was the rest of my guys, who were all good as well, got sick of his shit and attacked him in the middle of a dungeon, which meant that I wiped out. So I had to reload the save. Wow. And then that didn't happen again when I played it through. And then later on in the game, I finished a quest. I guess I must have got a lot of good points, And we were at an inn and he was like, I'm done with you. I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. I'm done with your shit. And he just left my party and that was it. I didn't get to hang out with him again. I had to replace him.
Well, that second one's pretty good, actually. That first one seems like that would just be annoying, but that second one,
I enjoyed both of those things. It's just that there's 2 of those moments in a 30-hour game. I would have liked a lot more character development.
Though on the other hand, I do like the idea of I can't believe we saved some people. I'm out. You gotta have standards,
I have to admit, even though I'm wearing my Astarion hoodie right now, that is kind of what Astarion is like at the beginning of Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah,
he hates it when you save people. He's like, ugh.
Yeah, but he kind of plays it off as like a camp.
He earns it. He earns it. Is what I'm gonna defend.
We're not gonna get into Astarion.
I am though. No, I'm joking. It's fine.
Spoiler alert, guys. God, I've not even played Baldur's Gate 2 yet. But yeah, so outside of the party issues, like I've said, the combat I thought was pretty fun. Like it was a good dynamic mix of turn-based and real-time. My only other issue with it was because it was quite hard and because it's so heavily based on dice rolls, it makes it quite hard. You'll try an experiment of, okay, maybe I'll get this person to cast this spell this time. But because it's so based on dice rolls, you don't really know whether your success or failure is down to your strategy or if it's down to you got a bad dice roll. So I'll end up repeating the same strategy like 5 or 6 times to sort of see if that worked, and then I'll move on to a different strategy. Which, I don't know, that's just something I'm mentioning. Like I guess I have, like, that seems inevitable with like a dice roll thing when it's a hard game. but it was a bit tricky. And then the last thing I'm going to beat Baldur's Gate with, and I might get in trouble for this, guys.
Oh, cancelled already.
Cancelled already because I'm not a real gamer, it turns out. Okay, so here's what happened. I've just described to you the last 5 hours and how I was like, I thought I'd already finished and I was a bit frustrated. I just wanted it to end. So I'm rushing. So it's on me. I accept that. It's somewhat on me. I'm running through Baldur's Gate, the city, trying to get to what feels like potentially the last big fight. And some NPC comes up to me and says his friend has poisoned me and I need to do exactly what he says to get the antidote, or else I'll be dead in 10 days. Now, one of my lines of dialogue is something like, you're just trying to manipulate me. I'm not going to do what you say.
Sure.
And I thought to myself, thank goodness that my character is a high enough intelligence or whatever that he can see through what this character is saying.
Yeah.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So I choose that line of dialogue and I continue on my merry way. I go through a number of dungeons full of hard battles, which takes me to the final boss room.
Yeah.
I need to rest my party. And while they rest, they all die. He wasn't bullshitting me. He had genuinely poisoned me. And there's nothing. So I'm like, at this point, I'm just going to Google what I need to do here because I'm done. I want this game to be finished. And it turns out there is nothing you can do. If you dismiss this guy,
yeah,
you can't go and you can't restart that quest later. He just won't talk to you. You could kill him and take the antidote, but the antidote he's got on his body is fake. So that still doesn't work. If you say no to this guy, your game is over in 10 days' time. There is zero way of avoiding it. You are done. So my choices were to restart, like, basically the last 5 hours of gameplay over again. Yeah. And I'll confess to you now, guys, what I did is I used console commands to get the antidote in.
You should have somehow gone back to a save where you could just finish it a bit faster so that you beat the end boss and then it's all happy, and you could just rest safe in the knowledge that one day later everyone's gonna die.
that was what was so brutal. It was literally I needed one more rest.
Exactly.
And I can finish the game. Maybe I could have avoided a rest, but God, it was brutal. Like that was such an unpleasant moment of like it was about 1 a.m. at this point, and maybe it was like midnight on Sunday night. So like I've got work in the morning, and I thought I was about to finish the game. Like I know I've got the final boss to do, but I'm just backing myself to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then this happens, and it's like, okay, well, here's my choice. I replay 5 hours worth of the game, or I spawn this thing in. And I spawned it in. So I apologize to my friends and family. I'm not a real gamer.
Yeah, fake gamer, Ed, the bad boy, also a fake gamer. How much of the bad boy persona is also faked? Leave that up to you, listener.
Yeah, bad at games, boy, is what I am. But yeah, overall, I was just happy to have played a piece of gaming history. Like when I first got into video games, like properly, like when I started like having opinions about which games I wanted to buy, I would go on review websites and sort by like best of all time, and Baldur's Gate at that point was always like right at the top of that list. So since like 2005 or something, before that, since the early 2000s, I've been really keen to play this game, and it just hasn't quite come to fruition until Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and then I was like, no, I really do need to put this at the top of my list somewhere, and thus I've played it. Does it hold up? Well, like I had a good time overall. Like RPGs in the 90s tend to give you more options than a lot of the RPGs that came out in the next 20 years. Like we're kind of going back in that direction a little bit, as we talked about a bit on the first episode.
Yeah.
So it was quite fun from that perspective. And I'm really interested now to see what Baldur's Gate 3 is like in comparison. I'm actually really excited to play that game, which I will probably do in the next year or so. But I do kind of get the impression that you probably would be better off playing Baldur's Gate 3 than Baldur's Gate 1. It's not a shock, I get that. But if you play Baldur's Gate 3, maybe do play Baldur's Gate 1. Maybe go back and have a look at it. Like it was quite fun. You've just got to know what you're getting in for, I think. I mean, and don't decline to do that poison quest. For God's sake.
I mean, from my understanding, and I also, I guess where it goes to Sofie, our Baldur's Gate 3 expert anyway.
I wouldn't call myself that. I'm just an Astorin expert.
Well,
anyway.
in that you're the only one of the three of us that's played it.
Right. Okay. I guess it does make me an expert then.
But my understanding is that like there's no like actual plot connection between them. They're just D&D adventures that also involve the city of Baldur's Gate.
Is there a connection between Baldur's Gate 2 and 1? You said you continue as the same character.
Oh, maybe it is.
I'm not sure. directly. So I was playing the enhanced edition, like I said, and directly after that, like, a sort of kind of sequel game starts up. So I don't know the years offhand. By thinking about 2014 or something, the same people that made the enhanced editions made like a midquel between the Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2, and I think it was like mediumly well received. My understanding is that yes, you can play it does follow on, and I think you do play the same character in Baldur's Gate 2. And I think you can have some of the same party members and all that kind of stuff. I think there's like an official canon version of the party at the end of Baldur's Gate 1, and so Baldur's Gate 2 I think starts with that party.
Yeah, it's a bit of I mean, this game itself is now a throwback, but I believe that was probably something of a throwback, because a lot of the very early RPGs from like the 80s, they had the ability to carry your party across games, Wizardry and Ultima. Shout out to a YouTuber called Majula, who's been doing a series of very good kind of documentaries on the history of Ultima, this like very foundational RPG from back in the day. But yeah, I think that sounds very interesting to me. Sophie, do you have any questions about Baldur's Gate? Again, as our expert, the expert here.
Yeah, I don't actually know if it continues on in the same timeline or if it even continues on from the same universe. But like,
well, I mean, it's D&D. It's D&D.
It's the same. Yeah, but I mean, you know what I mean in terms of the same timeline, right?
Yeah, sure.
So did things happen before or after? I don't know. Probably look forward to because there's a lot more characterization, obviously, in Baldur's Gate 3. I would say that's probably the emphasis of Baldur's Gate 3, is at least for me, where like I could take or leave the plot, but like in terms of characterization, I think you'll be happy, you know, with Baldur's Gate 3 that it's so much more heavily characterized.
Sure.
Even just when you said like Baldur's Gate 1 had like, how many characters did you say? Like 20? 25. Obviously, Baldur's Gate 3 has like 8?
Sounds about
7
right.
or something.
Right.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's much more. But obviously, it's quality rather than quantity. So
I mean, yeah, a lot of those
better. Yeah,
a lot of those old games had, you know, making a new character was having some pretty basic sprites and not even that much text in relation to these days. I mean, you see that even in JRPGs, like Final Fantasy VI has like loads of characters and like a bunch of hidden characters, and then Final Fantasy 16 is down to one character, one main character really. So yeah, it's just kind of economics.
I was just going to ask, you've liked Baldur's Gate 3, would you consider going back to play Baldur's Gate 1?
That's a good question. I think I probably wouldn't, just because it doesn't sound like the things that you liked about it are not really the sort of things I'm very interested in when it comes to RPGs. Like, I'm not really interested in combat. And I find that, like, that isometric style of game just generally quite difficult to get into, even in modern games.
Yeah, I have trouble with it.
Yeah, I just have trouble with it. So, like, Baldur's Gate 3, for me, was an exception to the rule in terms of, like, I delayed even buying it because I wasn't sure if it would be my thing. I ended up buying it with, like, a combination of being pretty sure I'd like it and also FOMO, because everyone was talking about it at the time. But like, it's the same reason I haven't gone back to the old Fallout games as well, because I'm like, it's just not really the sort of thing I think I would enjoy.
Yeah,
I get that. I mean, combat's not really the thing that I particularly like about RPGs either. Just that happened to be like a standout part of Baldur's Gate 1.
Yeah,
I would say Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 so far are probably more worth playing from this day, like from a gamer in this day and age. Like, the combat's not what's interesting about those games. But maybe we'll talk about Fallout another time. That's my review of Baldur's Gate 1. It's surprisingly affordable on Steam and other gaming places, despite it being so new. Maybe check it out if any of what I said sounds interesting to you, gentle listener.
And that's Baldur's Gate 1. Who knows how many Baldur's Gates are left?
Who knows?
Who knows? There could be any number of them.
Any number.
But until we find out the infinite number of Baldur's Gates, we're going to hear from Sophie. Hear the game she's talking about, which I am apparently informed is American Truck Simulator.
Correct, yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so...
maybe I should have made more stringent rules about what games we could choose, but fine, yeah, okay.
No. So I've been playing American Truck Simulator,
right,
basically.
I got
There's
it.
no way around it. That's what I've been doing. I almost talked about Chants of Sennaar, which is a game I played last year, thoroughly enjoyed, really, and I thought the politics were interesting and I informed the group that I would be discussing
That's
Chants
also
of
what I
Sennaar
thought was coming up.
until I changed my mind today on my commute, because I was like, hang on, I think I actually do have a take about American Truck Simulator, because I really just thought I would have nothing interesting to say about American Truck Simulator. So, American Truck Simulator, for those of you who don't know, is a driving simulator with business management elements released in 2016, developed by SCS Software. I didn't know this, but like all the simulator games are made by different companies. Some of them are made by the same ones.
Yeah,
A
I mean,
lot of them are
you
made by
can't
the
you
different
can't
ones.
copyright the word simulator.
No, I know, but I mean, I thought they had like the same font and stuff. I just thought they were all the same one. I just thought they were all made by the same people.
Well,
Anyway, they're not.
similarly, after Railroad Tycoon, there were
Yeah.
just a huge number of
Yeah.
games that had Tycoon at the end that were completely
Exactly.
unrelated.
Yeah. So in this game, players are tasked with starting their own trucking business in a condensed 1 to 20 scaled version of the United States, which include California, Arizona, and Nevada in the base game. Obviously, there's DLC to include more of the other states as well. Player begins with a shoddy garage in a city of their choice, owning no trucks and no trailers. You start with quick jobs that require delivering various loads to various locations with the goal of earning more money. With this money, the player is incentivized to expand their trucking business by buying their own trucks, trailers, garages, and eventually employees to drive the trucks that you own. Driving in the game is ultra realistic, where players are required to follow most, I have in brackets, of the laws of the road or face police tickets and penalties for running red lights, speeding, or crashing into NPC vehicles. Players must also contend with some of their human needs as a driver and need to rest occasionally and carefully so as to avoid late penalties on deliveries. Players level up as drivers and can appoint skill points into various categories that enable the player to haul more valuable loads, drive longer distances, experience better fuel economy, making each delivery all the more profitable as you progress through the game. So obviously by itself, on its surface, I don't think it has very interesting politics. It's very capitalistic. It says sort of meritocratic as well. It says if you work hard, you can build a business and be successful.
Yeah.
So like on the base level, I would say not very interesting, but I've been playing this game sort of alongside like watching Twitch and like listening to podcasts and like reading books or listening to books and stuff. And it's just been kind of relaxing and satisfying to drive across like what can be quite an attractively rendered American landscape.
Yeah.
Deliver a product and then earn money for it, right? So it just kind of scratches that itch of completing things on a to-do list. I feel like probably makes me feel maybe a similar way that Stardew Valley did as well. It's just kind of busy work, but it's quite satisfying.
Yeah, yeah.
But without...
a good podcast game.
Exactly.
Game for that.
Exactly. Good for like catching up on stuff. So the take that I have, the exciting
there we go.
take
This is what
that
we're here
I
for.
have,
We're here for
alright?
the takes.
is that similar simulators obviously exist for a variety of like roles and business types. Like farming simulator developed by Giant Software, or a bus driver. Could be a bus driver in Bus Simulator, developed by Still Alive Studios. And as I said initially, I wasn't going to discuss this game, but basically I decided that I do have a take. Forgive me, because I'm going to expand the sort of American Truck Simulator discussion
Oh, wow.
into what I'm calling a discussion about blue-collar simulator games.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
This is interesting.
And this is where I think the meat is. And I've had this thought for a while. I almost wrote a video essay on it, and then I realized that I took a year. I'm taking over a year to write my follow-up video essay to my previous video essay about vampires. So
too much truck simulator.
too much Truck Simulator. I'm just so distracted. But yeah, basically, I think in American Truck Simulator, the player is tasked with building their small business in a world where they have skipped the job-seeking process, which I think is important, and have immediately been placed in a role. Importantly, that role usually doesn't have a boss. And this is the case for a lot of other sort of small business simulators, including like things like Stardew Valley, including things like, Bus Driver Simulator, Farming Simulator. You're basically in control of your own business and your goal is to grow it. You don't have a boss, which I think is really key in these sort of blue-collar simulator jobs. The game takes place in a world that is very unantagonistic to the player's professional growth. Progress is like purely based on a meritocratic basis. So it's kind of this meritocratic fantasy, I would say. So American Truck Simulator and blue-collar simulator games, which is what I'm calling them, generally give players an opportunity to experience a job that is directly connected to the means of production and directly profit from their time and effort that they put into their work. While ATS in isolation represents a false understanding of capitalism and meritocracy, that the harder you work, the more successful you'll become, it also represents an interesting sense of escapism, and that's kind of the point that I'm interested in. And popular games like this sort of simulate this, blue-collar working experience. And the fact that they exist, for me, serves to illustrate this very interesting need for players to experience work that is rewarding, free of hierarchy, and individually directed. As in, no boss, no colleagues. You're just kind of doing your own thing. You're free to work at your own pace as well, which I think is also really important. Things like Stardew and even American Truck Simulator, like there's a bit of time crunch in terms of seasons and delivering a job, but you can take a job whenever you want and you can, rest, etc. whenever you want. So the time pressures of like real blue collar work is not there as much. And this escapism from white collar work and the sort of larger phenomenon of bullshit jobs wherein workers feel a sense of purposeless in their roles, where they perform one of like many small functions as a part of a long chain of other small functions, like receiving emails and, going to meetings, and you don't really get to see the product of your work. I would argue, and like most white collar jobs where you're in an office, you don't really get to see the product of like the things that you worked on with your own hands coming to fruition. And in stark comparison, obviously, players in games such as these they're in charge of the means of production. They are the means of production, and they also deliver the product to fruition and receive the profits from that production, just all directly. It's a very, it's just a completely opposite process. That is, of course, until they're able to hire underlings to do the hard work for them and then operate a trucking empire when they've bought every garage in the country, which you can do. You could just buy every garage in the country, and now you are the trucking industry. So yeah, but basically it has very little meaningful commentary on the very real difficulty of trucking. Like, I think a lot of these games will oversimplify the industries that they have you role play as. Obviously, being a trucker is not relaxing and fun. It's obviously quite lonely. It's quite stressful. There are safety implications as well. And obviously, famously, people have to sacrifice their own need for sleep and hunger and even bathroom needs in order to make deliveries on time. I said, truckers must meet intense deadlines whilst also living on the road, which can be uncomfortable at best and dangerous at worst. Consequences for crashing and driving while sleepless are minimal in ATS, basically so much so that if a player drives like 24 hours without rest, heaviest consequence they might face is blurred vision and a traffic fine. So like, definitely not representative of the actual struggles of working in a job like that. But yeah, I kind of noticed this phenomenon of like, especially white collar people or people who work fairly white collar jobs, very notably inside an office, really enjoy these outdoor jobs, or jobs that are not maybe not outside, but often outside. And if not outside, like at a premises, which is usually quite attractive, quite nice, not, completely different from like the stark, white office setting that we would associate with white collar work. And I think I started thinking about this when I played Stardew Valley. And I thought, yeah, I feel like a lot of people have this desire to escape to Stardew Valley. I feel like it happens often. People sort of enter a Stardew Valley phase in autumn again, because it's all when we're sort of out, we're back inside and we're probably kind of nesting for the winter and kind of craving this outdoor experience.
Yeah.
And also just a connection to the work that you do. And it's just interesting that obviously people are craving this kind of productivity, this sense of producing something and working on something and growing something, like literally in the case of Stardew Valley, but like, even in Trucking Simulator, it's this job that you tick off and then you get the money. And there's just, this interesting escapism element of wanting to do jobs that are not actually very desirable in real life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it really kind of puts paid to the criticism of things like UBI, Universal Basic Income.
Exactly.
That, if you're getting free money, then you're just going to lay about. When we've got these games like Truck Simulator that they're basically, they're work fantasy.
Yeah.
They're like, what if I could do work, and because it's fictional, I don't have to worry about, if I fuck up too much, I might run out of money and be destitute. And also all the kind of bad stuff has been filed out of it. People still want to do it. They'll literally pay money for the opportunity to do a nicer version of work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think if anything, it like this not only disproves the criticism, but it kind of reinforces the benefits that people would be very happy to do work if it was good, if it was if it wasn't a shit show and and your survival wasn't on the line for it.
Yeah, if people enjoyed it, right? Because like, if nobody's read Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber, I couldn't recommend it enough. It's just a fantastic book, and it's like, this is kind of my thesis is formed on the basis of that book, where you have people who, it's mostly anecdotal, and he talks about people who get paid shit tons of money to do nothing, and it depresses you. Like, I once had a bullshit job in Japan where I was teaching English, and like, it was a bullshit job. Like, I basically sat in an office for like 8 hours a day and pretended to look busy. And when I was in a classroom, I basically just repeated words. for students for pronunciation. It was like genuinely really depressing. And for like a lot of people who have worked in that kind of a bullshit job, it's depressing. It makes you, even if you're getting paid shit tons of money, you know, like as you say, there's this narrative that if everyone gets UBI, then no one's going to do the hard jobs. And it's like, well, some people like doing things like cleaning. Like I don't, but some people get genuine enjoyment out of cleaning, and they would probably do that, you know, for free or in addition to what they were sort of like doing as part of their daily lives, you know, because there's this joy, this very specific joy of doing a job that needs doing, where you can see immediate results. I also noticed this when I played Coffee Talk, which is a game where you play as a barista. And basically your job is just to talk to customers, get to know them, and make a good cup of coffee. And like, I think I remember reading a statistic, but I don't have the sort of evidence to back it up. But I'm pretty sure I remember reading a statistic that shows that like one of the jobs with the highest job satisfaction is being a barista. And the reason is because you just get to talk to people and you make a product and it makes their day better. Like you make someone a nice cup of coffee, you know? And like, it's one of those things that a lot of people would voluntarily do, even if they weren't being paid, as long as their daily needs would be taken care of, because people love making coffee and people love drinking it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of jobs I could imagine, like theoretically, I'd love to do that. Yeah, there's kind of little thing that like kids do. They love the idea of being like, I'm a train driver or something. And like train driver is probably not the worst job, if only because of the fantastic efforts of the RMT and the other unions. But nowadays, it's not really a job I'd like want to have. I certainly wouldn't like fantasize about having it. But, you know, there are train simulator games as well, and I could imagine playing them. There's a kind of a fundamental weird part of kind of game design where almost every game you play that isn't like super abstract has you doing something that you would expect to be paid for in real life. I mean, if Mario really was rescuing a princess every day, he'd expect to be getting some kind of stipend from the mushroom crown, I'd imagine. But like, you know, like soldiers or skateboarders or whatever, footballers, these are things they expect to be paid for their work. And yet we gladly do it for free or even for money. But then when you play the games, you have things where like, you know, you get these a lot in MMO RPGs where, like, for instance, in World of Warcraft, I've barely played it, but my understanding is like early on there was quite a lot of friction in it. And then as the years went by, they brought in more and more kind of like, oh, here's a quality of life thing. Now you can just teleport to places. Now you can do stuff like that. And they put in so many of them that eventually they brought back World of Warcraft Classic, where all that was gone, so that people could play it the way it used to be, because it felt like a real like adventure. But now it felt like you're just, you know, clicking through things on a menu because that's the quickest way to do anything. So there is just something about what games are and how it relates to the concept of work, and then that inherently brings it into the world of politics. And it's just an interesting thing to think about. I don't know if I have any real conclusions on it, but the relationship between games and work is very interesting.
I've thought a lot about this as well, because I've not played any of these like games with simulator in the name, but I have played Stardew Valley. It's actually the game on Steam with my highest playtime.
Yeah.
And also the actual game that I've played most in my life is RuneScape, the MMORPG, which heavily revolves around long grind sessions, which you're basically doing work. But I've thought a lot about what makes that game appealing to me, because I've talked a lot about RuneScape to people and I can't really justify it, but I still play it and it's very Moorish. But it comes back to this being the thing about it being self-directed. Like, because I'm deciding to do this very tedious task, suddenly it has worth to me and it's value, and it proves something about me that I did it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think that's part of the World of Warcraft classic versus original thing as well. If you've been on this long grind in RuneScape, rune crafting is a very tedious skill, but this is in 2007's version of RuneScape.
Yeah.
It's a very tedious skill, but you can't fix it. You can't make it more interesting, because if you do, that devalues the achievements of everyone that's already maxed out on it. So you end up with this interesting thing of like, it being difficult is part of and boring even, is part of the appeal. Like, that's part of what engages you. You're choosing to do something tedious and you've got like something to show for it. So and back on the American Truck Simulator thing, it feels like it's basically a simulator of like the American dream, right? It's telling you, you too can make it. It's what you're starting off as effectively a member of the petty bourgeois, would you say? Like,
guess so,
you
yeah.
own some of the means of production.
Yeah.
You don't have any direct employees at the start of the game, and it's sort of, and that's always been the American dream, right? That's, you can be a small business owner and you can, be self-directed. You're almost like a cowboy riding around, choosing what to do. And
I feel like we should make clear though that the original version was European Truck Simulator,
wasn't it?
and I think it had the same element to it. So it's not a pure, and I think this is some kind of Eastern European made game. Most of these are. So it's not fully like a US capitalist propaganda.
But my point is, you wouldn't need that propaganda because that sort of, you're in charge of, you're self-directed in some way. Like, you're in charge of your own time to some extent. Like, that really speaks to something that we all feel we're lacking, like Sophie's just talked about, or at least I feel like I'm lacking it, and I think lots of other people do too. And I think it captures what capitalism sort of promises to be. It promises to give you this kind of freedom, while at the same time undermining your actual ability to do that. Because in order for capitalism to function, we can't all be small business owners, or let alone big business owners. Like, most of us do have to be workers. Like, most of us have to have a boss. So that's what I find interesting about these games. It lets you sort of explore that feeling of self-control in a context of a wider society, which sort of promises you that you can do that while actually denying the conditions of that to most people. It makes me think a little bit of like Uber drivers, like people who their class position is a bit complicated. Like, I've seen arguments that Uber drivers maybe should be considered part of the lumpen proletariat rather than the petty bourgeois. Like, the fact that they own some of their own means of production doesn't seem to be as liberatory as you kind of suggest, because actually core parts of their means of production are still kept from them. Whereas in this game, that whole aspect seems to be simulated out. You're completely free. Whereas even if you are a small business owner, a petty bourgeois small business owner, and you're making your way in society, like, you're still heavily constrained by the wider market. And probably, you talked about farming simulators, like farmers maybe are members of the petty bourgeois to some extent, like people who own their own farms, but you see a lot of horrible conditions imposed on farmers, for example, where they have to buy a certain crop and the crop has been like genetically mutated to make sure that you have to buy it again next year. You can't grow your own seeds again. So there's something interesting about these games where they've picked the exact things which are appealing about the American dream, or like about what capitalism promises, and it cuts out all of the things in the real world that make it horrible. It speaks to something that we all find appealing and that the world promises but then sort of denies. They're really interesting genres. I completely agree.
I've often wondered about kind of RPGs. This is obviously, I suppose, going back to the previous game, but RPGs kind of are, I mean, I feel bad saying this, but in many ways they're sort of inherently right-wing, in that they have the promise of building yourself up by your own, pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, basically all the way to saving the world. Every fight or battle or whatever you get into is rewarding. Either you literally get paid or you get XP or something. So it ends up being worthwhile for you to have done that. And you just get stronger and stronger. You get more and more money so you can buy more and more gear, so that now you're even stronger. And eventually, by the end of the game, you are, in most RPGs, like some sort of living god. Literally in lots of JRPGs, famously, you kill God at the end. That's how powerful you get. But like, I remember in the run-up to Cyberpunk, I saw some people on the left online really looking forward to it. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have been, but it was on the basis that, they thought it was going to be really kind of very trenchant and left-wing, on the basis that in The Witcher 3, you play the Witcher as like an underclass, and people like spit on him as he walks by, because everyone thinks that the Witchers are dirty, but they've still got to bring him in to fight monsters and so on. And that element is there, but I think it's undermined by the inherent RPG-ness of it, because in The Witcher 3, you may start off relatively lowly, but by the end of the game, again, you have an ungodly amount of money, you have all the best armor in the game, you, as part of the plot, you are literally on like first name basis with all the crowned heads of the local area, or all the powerful people. In the DLC, you just get given a villa with the entire staff of the villa as well. So just things like that happen. There's just something inherently about RPGs that are simulating. And I wonder if this is an issue for the left. I think there is an inherent human kind of enjoyment, excitement around the idea of what is essentially entrepreneurialism, of just like building something up and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and better. You know, you play Bellatra, you want to see the number go up, you know, just out on that fundamental level. And I think that is something that the left have to contend with, that the right can in some way just have a fundamentally more exciting offer as a philosophy, whether it works or not, you know?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings in terms of like whether it's that we have that to offer or it's just part of the fantasy, right? Like where you can play The Sims, and then one of the ways you can play The Sims is try to make as much money as you want. You could also try and max out all the skills.
Yeah.
You know? So
but I mean, even that, the skills are numbers, just like money's a number, and the number's gone up, and now you're better than you used to be, and it's still maximizing. You know, you're not living a good life of a good simple life of happy pleasures.
Well, I mean, you can do that also in the sense. That's the thing. Like, I think more and less than maybe like they have an exciting vision to offer. It's just that games are a way to enact a fantasy, often in a way of escapism. And for a lot of us, that might be accumulating resources, especially because, you know, it's not something a lot of us have a lot of. Something I was just going to mention was that, like, I just think it's very interesting that, you know, there are games that put you in a corporate sort of white collar environment, sort of going back to my thesis. I cannot think of a single one that isn't dystopian. In terms of like you've got the Stanley Parable, which is literally a game about pointlessness and like the ambiguity of purpose, which is how so many people feel in their sort of white collar jobs. And also I can think of Corpo Nation as well, which is basically Papers, Please. Yeah. But in a white collar corporate setting as well.
Well, I was gonna mention Papers, Please, because the interesting thing, again, I've not played it. I probably should do, but my understanding is that as well as in that game, you are an immigration guard, or not guard, but like people come to you with their papers, and you have to process them for immigration in a dystopian, like authoritarian state. But so the question is like, oh, you want to do it by the book, but then you keep having to like, you know, cut corners to block people out because you have quotas to meet. But also there's a whole level where you have your own personal finances, you have a family to look after, and you get less money every week. So maybe you're going to start taking bribes, or you're going to block more people from coming in to keep your quotas up so you can keep up. Yeah, and it's that kind of level, that layer that gives you essentially a reason to become corrupt instead of just you decide you're going to be a cackling villain.
Yeah, I don't know that I fully agree with your RPG is inherently right-wing thesis either. I think one thing that I would question would be the idea that like the left's not inherently like degrowth, is it? Like the socialist left has a history of not wanting to decrease production, and like they don't necessarily want to stop the numbers going up. Like some I'm not weighing in one way or the other on degrowth versus a more like a Promethean socialism. Yeah. But there's certainly a storied history in the left of factions of the left like arguing that socialism is the way to increase productivity and go more down. Well, I would say maybe RPGs would pose a potential challenge, or that the appeal of RPGs might potentially challenge like a degrowth thing. Like you've got to come up with some answer to the idea that there does appear to be a tendency in people at the moment, at least socially, to want the number to go up. And again, RuneScape is my most played game. I want that number to go up. Yeah. But I do think it's an interesting question to interrogate, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that's inherently
I think
capitalist
the difference is, and I'm sure there must be some RPGs that abstract this out to to like an entire population or something, but like RPGs are almost always about one or maybe a group of guys going to save the world, and they go out and they make the numbers go up for themselves, not for society in general.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I don't, off the top of my head, disagree with that. I think that is interestingly different from RPGs being inherently right wing, though. I think that's saying the generic, the like average RPG, most RPGs, the vast majority of RPGs potentially do sort of fit a more right-wing narrative more readily than like a socialist narrative.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's necessarily a critique of RPGs per se, in as much as it's a critique of like RPGs as they exist, actually existing RPGs, if you will.
True RPGs have never been tried.
Exactly.
Saying,
We'll try it soon. But there are also, there are MMORPGs as well, aren't there?
Yeah.
So like, I get that covers like groups of players, but I do think there is an interesting thing to interrogate there. Like, I also play a bit of Guild Wars too, and guilds are a big part of that game in my experience, where like people coming together to like trade various things and to like group together to take on various bits of the content. So I'm not saying that undermines your argument, but I think there's something more to be explored there than the provocation that you put out, which is that RPGs are inherently right wing.
Well, I'm just famously putting cats among the pigeons. Everyone knows that about me.
I think also something here as well is just writing, honestly, right? It's just, and I think when you're saying like most RPGs have this kind of a format of, one guy saves the world, I also think majority of the games I'm thinking of an example of that are AAA, and all of the examples that I can think of that are not like that are sort of indie games with a bit more adventurous writing. I think it's just risk-free versus risky writing in terms of like, immediately when you were talking about that, I thought of a game called Spiritfarer, which I don't know if either of you have played.
I've heard of it.
And that's like an indie, that's an RPG, and you do accumulate resources, but mostly you accumulate friends on your ship. And like, it really is just about, like, I would say it's, most AAA RPGs are telling the story that is most common, which is just the hero's journey. That's what it is. I think it's less capitalist and more just it's telling a common story.
Could well
which is proven successful, I think when it comes to probably more about risk-averse writing as opposed to risky writing from my perspective.
Or writing that needs to seek a profit, like first and foremost. Like that's the context in which the game has been made.
That's true.
Then it's going to fulfill this like primary fantasy that people have like evidenced to have had over centuries because the story is successful.
Yeah.
So that's American Truck Simulator.
That's American Truck Simulator.
We'll leave it up to the listener to decide if American Truck Simulator proved whether RPGs are inherently left or right wing.
Not that American Truck Simulator is an RPG, but
I mean, it is if you play it properly. I don't even know what that means.
Put on an accent and play it. That's what that means.
Yeah, just give yourself, every time you drive 1 mile, give yourself as many XP points as you imagine you deserve. Just write it down on a little notepad and go from there. You can turn any game into an RPG.
Now I'm a hero.
Yeah. Okay, yes, well, it's my go now. And I'm going to be talking about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. And so the first thing, yes, that's the one. That's the one. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the joke out of the way. We're going to call it an indie game. We've all laughed. Every single person on the planet who's ever mentioned this game has made that joke. It's an indie game. Okay, we've done it. Yeah. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is what it's called. And it's produced by, what's it called? Machine Games. They're the people who made the Wolfenstein games, which have an excellent pedigree of killing Nazis. Lots of excellent amount of killing Nazis in those games, and that's a pedigree they've continued because you get to kill, well, at the very least, heavily injure. It's not, there's not a great deal of blood in this game, so maybe you're kind of playing out that you're just knocking them out or something, even if you shot them 4 times in the head. But they're Nazis and they're dead.
Good stuff. I like that.
So the kind of thing, this game kind of took a lot of people a bit by surprise. They announced it a while ago, and licensed games don't have an incredible track record, so I think people were a bit guarded. And then when they saw the footage of it, it's almost all in first person, which people weren't expecting. And people just thought, and including myself, that, we've already had the Tomb Raider games and the Uncharted games that obviously both heavily crib from Indiana Jones. What is this really going to do that's new? And what's really surprising is how much it does feel new. Basically, there is quite a bit of you go into tombs and you do a bit of platforming, go up some platforms, do some puzzles, that big ancient cogs that go kung, and
I just realized in the Nazi section none of us said I hate those guys.
I mean, I think that's implied.
It's a quote from Indiana
Jones. I know.
We really should have included that.
I played the whole game. I think he says that in there.
I apologize to all our listeners that we did not pick up on that.
Well, I'm very sorry, listener.
When we talk about snakes later, we'll make sure to include
There's a lot of snake stuff in this game as well.
I hate those guys.
Lots of snakes. No, so the big thing is that while there are some quite relatively linear bits where you do kind of traditional stuff, you do a whip onto a branch and swing over a hole. There's a lot of
Traditional stuff.
Yeah,
This
traditional
is what they
stuff.
took from you.
Yeah, yeah. Return, but with a V in it. What's really surprising about this game is that large parts of it, basically, there are 3 very large areas, like miniature open world areas that you can just kind of walk around. You have little side quests, and basically they're kind of like it's a light kind of miniature immersive sim. You have quite a lot of options for how you do things. You need to get into a little camp so you can, sneak in through the back. You can shoot people on your way in. It's a lot deeper than a lot of people were expecting, and it had a real kind of great reception that's largely fueled by the surprise, because everyone could just, you could just imagine what the Indiana Jones game is going to be in your head. And frankly, that game has been made in many ways a bunch of times over the years. And so the fact that they've actually found something new to do with it is really fantastic. But what's I'm here to talk about is the political angle. So something that people got very excited about is quite how often Indy refers to fascists. He's always complaining about fascists. He's saying how much he hates fascists, and a lot of people have been very excited about that. However, I think maybe people don't really appreciate this game. Large parts of it, I mean, the first of those big 3 areas is the Vatican, which is in Italy in the 1930s. So the fascists he's talking about are literally members of the fascist party. They're Italian black shirts. So the fact that he calls them fascists isn't really, that impressive. They are literally fascists. But there's like an interesting story. You go on this adventure where the actual MacGuffin and what the kind of equivalent of the Ark of the Covenant in this game isn't that interesting. But the whole point is obviously bad people want it. The Nazis want it and the fascists want it. And they're working together in classic style. But Mussolini briefly turns up. Unfortunately, you don't get to kill him. I guess that would be a bit too divergent from actual history. I think, if you had Indiana Jones...
Unlike when the Ark of the Covenant opened in the 1930s.
I mean, that happened in secret. I think if you had that Mussolini was murdered by an archaeologist in the mid-30s, that would probably have been recognized somewhere. All those upside-down memes on Twitter wouldn't make any sense at all. So Mussolini turns up, that old chap, but he's quite quickly subsumed by an excellent villain who's a very good Nazi in the classic style. And one of the things that they kind of do with that is they are
well done, right?
Yeah. An excellent Nazi.
Very good Nazi.
I should have said
very good at being a Nazi.
I should have said an excellent Nazi villain.
Okay. That's better.
He's
I love how Nazi he was. It's so good.
And they're clearly going for something because they have him. He's obsessed with psychology. And
that's very Nazi coded.
Exactly.
They do love that.
And he literally keeps talking about how easily men are manipulated by appealing to their insecurities about masculinity. And,
they do love that.
And yeah. I mean, it seems like it seems pretty clear to me that this is a reference to our good friend Jordan Peterson. That's that.
Boys. What about the boys?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
I was basically just lining you up to do that impression.
Well, the lobsters. Okay, I won't do
that. But that's a good bit of fun. But I mean, it is quite a bit less kind of interested in that stuff than the Wolfenstein games that really have some really phenomenal, especially in the second one, really phenomenal stuff about interrogating America's own kind of Nazi adjacent history and present. But another kind of angle this is interested in is interrogating, and there's not too much of this, but the fact that he was there at all I did find very interesting, was kind of interrogating Indiana Jones as a concept himself, because Indiana Jones is based originally on kind of it's a pastiche of 1930s adventure serials and kind of Victorian era adventure, like pulp novels and that sort of thing. And so even though he's already, you can tell he's already modernized a little bit for the 1980s, that he's not just like just like going out a soldier of fortune to go and murder some natives or something, but he's an archaeologist who's there to save important artifacts. But his whole famous line is that it belongs in a museum. He's looking for these artifacts, and that's where they should go.
Which country's museum?
Exactly. Well, that's the question, right?
So it was like, because I'm sorry, I was just thinking of Tomb Raider immediately, right? Who just collects them.
Yeah.
She literally is just an analog for the British colonial project, whereas that she just collects them in her house and just has them because she's a British woman.
Yeah.
Of course she does.
Of course. So there is a bit of that. Obviously, that's just an inherently dated concept for the reasons we just said. So many imperial conquests have ended up putting much of the booty they have recovered in their museums, and obviously us most famously, the British Museum.
As a South African, I'm personally offended by this.
Should probably avoid talking about that. But obviously, the British Museum is just stuffed to the brim with ill-gotten gains, such as the Benin bronzes. That's a particularly bad one. So when Indiana Jones was conceived in the 80s, clearly that idea that we are taking these people's cultural history and putting it in our museum, that is actually a noble endeavor in some way. And, through certain lenses, you can imagine it being that. It's not any 100% unfounded concept. But the reality is that certainly the vast majority of these peoples would much rather have them in their own country than off in distant lands that they're never going to get to see them. So that is interrogated somewhat in this game. It's quite light. It's certainly not, I wouldn't say, a major element of the plot. The fact that it was there is interesting. So there are, as I said, there are three kind of main areas you end up. You spend some time in other places too, but these are the three big ones. And the first one, and I guess light spoilers if you really don't want to know anything about this, is the first one is the Vatican. So, frankly, feel free to steal anything you like from the Vatican. That's fine. No one's going to be bothered with that. But then the second one is Egypt. And the final one is, I believe it's in Thailand. Although they call it Siam, and which is like the old colonial name for Thailand, but I don't know enough about history to know if the colonial Siam is exactly the same as Thailand. Maybe there's some other elements. But I believe it's Thailand in this game. And so when you're in Egypt, one of the first things you do is meet this character who is an Egyptian lady, but she's like apparently married to an English lord or something. So she has a very posh accent. And she's like kind of a bit of an adventurer. Actually, I shouldn't say she's married to a lord. She's actually the I guess mixed race, maybe daughter of a lord or something. Because part of the thing is that she's secretly a lesbian. They kind of hide that in there a bit. I do wish they'd have Indy kind of actually react to that. I'd be interested what angle they go for. 1930s archaeologist, super woke guy in 1937. Probably not. Maybe it's for the best that they didn't. But anyway, she's kind of a cool character. And at one point, you go on a little adventure with her, and he does kind of have a go at you for wanting to claim this artifact belongs in a museum. And at the end, Indy kind of relents and is like, okay, it can go in the Egyptian museum. And so they get a little bit there. But then in the final part, when you're in Thailand, you're working with these rebels against the regime there. And they like immediately dislike Indy on the basis that they've had all these archaeologists coming here to plunder our cultural history. And he basically has to get probably significantly more woke than he would have been in saying, oh no, we're doing it for you guys. And they have incredible power and the Nazis are trying to get it. So we kind of have to stop the Nazis. But I swear we won't take anything else. So the mere fact that they're dealing with this stuff is really interesting. And on top of the fact that, this game is so much more kind of gameplay progressive than you would have expected. Although most of these open worlds do kind of, and I suppose this is really on me for enjoying the game enough to want to kind of extend it out as long as possible, that you end up you can end up getting these booklets in the game, but they essentially just add points to your map that end up showing you where every single collectible and thing is. And I ended up just 100%ing them. So quite a large part of my game was just like wandering around to places to find one little trinket and then leaving. But again, that's on me. No one made me do it. Maybe my commitment to
real capitalist.
You got me. You got me. Oh, and I know that's wrong. I said it was an inherent human value to want to do these things, even in a fictional section. So what? You know what? Yeah, in your face, I just reinforced my argument.
I'm not gonna. It's too long of a discussion, but I disagree.
I'm going to edit that bit out.
Can't silence a woman, Alex. It's a really bad look.
I'm editing that out.
You guys can't do that.
Oh, well,
it's a really bad look.
That's getting edited out. So much stuff is getting edited out. Who has the real
say
power?
something.
Who has the power?
Defend me, Ed. Can't edit you
Defend
out.
your honor.
Consider yourself edited. You're all edited. I'm the edit master. I'm the edit king.
Just as long as you don't edit out that whole bit earlier where Sophie proved definitively that Marx was right about everything.
All right.
As long as you keep that in, I'm okay.
We'll see. I don't have a huge amount to say about Indiana Jones. It's a fun game.
Do you recommend it?
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. It's Tony Todd's final role, which is a bit weird. The actor Tony Todd, he died just before Christmas, and I mean, maybe he's going to be in a film or something that is in the can, but he's in this, which is kind of odd. And it's just good fun, and the fact that they kind of realize the questionable nature of Indiana Jones and deal with that a little bit. At least shows that they've noticed that stuff, which is nice. And yeah, it's fun to kill Nazis. Troy Baker, who plays Indy, famous game voice actor who did a guy from what's it? The Last of Us.
Oh right, yeah, okay. Brunette white man guy.
Joel.
I mean, he's not. Yeah, Joel.
Yeah, brunette white man guy.
I, mean, I feel like I feel like brunette means you're a woman.
No, it
I
just
mean,
means brown
It's
hair.
Ed.
No,
It's Ed.
Brunette just means brown hair.
I mean, it's kind of a sexist.
What do I say if I say brown hair man?
A brown-haired man, yeah,
stupid.
brown-haired
That
man.
sounds stupid.
I mean, I think if I
I've always
want to
thought
outwoke
brunette
you,
is an
I think that
adjective.
I would consider brunette to be quite a sexist term because it only relates to women.
Okay,
and
but
it defines women by their hair
I'm also
color.
an English teacher, so I do kind of understand how words is. It's fine. No, whatever. Maybe. Whatever. Brown-haired man. Plays every brown-haired white man. Brown-haired white man guy.
Yeah, it's true. He's also let his weird game fame go to his head and has got very strange in general. Though I not just the right side of being cancelled so far, so that's good news. But anyway, he plays Indy and he does like an incredible Harrison Ford impression. But it's maybe a bit too gravelly, but I mean it's easily good enough for you to within the first 5 minutes just forget that it's someone else doing the voice, just go along with it. It's a really great little game. I recommend it. It's kind of sad that they put it out in like the last week or two of the year when people have kind of got over new games coming out. But yeah, I recommend it.
I'll probably play it.
No, you should do. And now we are on to the news. So we're doing things a little differently this time. My wonderful colleagues here have their own stories they're going to talk about. And that's what we're going to be talking about this week. First up, Sophie with the incredible news because things have happened. A console has been announced.
Indeed.
It's coming.
Indeed.
Sophie, tell us about it.
It's the Nintendo Switch 2.
2?
2!
They've done
did
2
another
of
one.
them?
Yeah, they did another one.
Oh, I can't believe it.
I know, yeah. So I had to look up this story in just a fair bit of detail because, full disclaimer, I think we've discussed this on the podcast in the past. I've never played a single Mario game. I never really grew up playing Nintendo games. This isn't. Don't worry,
dear listener. We'll have a new comrade on the podcast next time.
Yeah, so just don't really have much of a history with it. I did think about buying the Switch at some point, but just for Zelda. Because Breath of the Wild looks fun. Anyway,
it's very good.
Yeah, no, I know, but I also don't want to give Nintendo my money. Anyway, maybe if I do, it'll be the Nintendo Switch 2. Apparently, they are thinking of remastering Breath of the Wild for the 2. That's the
rumor, yes.
That is a rumor that exists. So basically, yeah, I guess we all saw the trailer, right?
Yes.
It's just this sort of like happy music.
2.5 minutes, baby.
2 minutes and 22 seconds.
Oh, sorry.
Actually, which is apparently important for the branding.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Because somebody in the comment section mentioned
That's
that.
deep.
There you go. See, I did my research. Yeah, so that came out and that's it. It's coming out. That's it. No, basically, yeah, I guess the trailer came out 6 days ago today. So it came out on January 16th, 2025. I guess there was a lot of leaks about the Nintendo Switch 2. So there is kind of this tone of the trailer of like, well, here it is.
Yeah.
You fucking know already.
Mm-hmm.
So leave us alone. And it's like a lot of the comments in the YouTubes in the comment section are like that, where they're just like, they seem really mad about being found out. Like they had this big surprise and they got it spoiled. But yeah, basically, like a lot of the stuff they know about it is kind of rumors. I read an IGN article and also an independent article
Wow, the
about.
Independent.
Yeah, it seems, I guess, like, they'd been kind of had their surprise spoiled. The response seems pretty, I would say, lukewarm.
I think most people are kind of like,
yeah, okay.
I like the Switch. I guess it's another one.
I guess I'll get another
but
one.
Nintendo have been famous for wild gimmicks and
Yeah,
stuff, and this
exactly,
seems
yeah.
almost entirely gimmick free.
Yeah, so basically, like, I guess the only sort of major differences that we can really tell from the trailer is that it's probably going to be like about 15% bigger.
Yeah,
the screen is bigger.
bigger.
There's some differences in terms of like the connectivity. I read that like basically the joystick is supposed to connect differently. Instead of having like a rail that it slides onto, it's supposed to have like
the Joy-Cons.
the Joy-Con. Yeah, sorry, the Joy-Con. The Joy-Con is supposed to connect differently to the sort of main body of the console instead of like sliding on. It has like a little connecting, potentially magnetic bit, which is kind of maybe hinted at in the trailer. There is also, hilariously, so there's this like zoom, very prominent zoom that they do of the control stick, like moving very smoothly, the thumbstick moving very smoothly, and loads of people in the whether the number one comment on the YouTube video with 122,000 likes is, quote, "That control stick spinning with style better be flex for no upcoming drifting issues," unquote.
Yes.
Because obviously that's like
famously the Switch has
the
terrible,
most common
drift
complaint.
Yes. People are hoping it has what's called Hall effect
yeah.
sticks, which are basically a type of stick that
that
doesn't or it gets extremely small amounts of drift.
It's such a common issue that it's like listed as one of the troubleshooting issues on the Nintendo official website support section, which is quite sad.
Yeah, I believe that Nintendo had like to commit a large amount of money to agree that they can have like no dispute Joy-Con replacements.
My Switch had drifting issues.
Oh, really?
Replaced the Joy-Cons.
Wow.
A real shame. So hopefully this Switch 2 stuff's going to work out.
Yeah.
So yeah, confirmed it'll arrive in 2025. They haven't confirmed a release date for the console. There's probably more information coming out in April, is what they threatened.
Yeah.
Different price predictions. Basically, analysts speaking to IGN predict the price will be around 330 British pounds or $400 US. But also a new leak, which was in the independent article that I read today, which was posted like 4 hours ago.
Wow, this is news.
They suggest it might be anywhere between $399 and $499 US, which is quite expensive.
I mean, I think partly that's because Trump's going to do some tariffs, so all the electronics are going to go up in price. Is basically
if he gets those through. The trailer also features sort of a sneak peek of like what's probably Mario Kart 9, which people are very excited for.
Yeah.
And basically there aren't any other sort of AAA official releases. Basically Mario Kart 9 is probably the only real like AAA release that we know about.
Yeah.
We don't have any
there's
rumors, but
it seems extremely likely there'll be a new 3D Mario because they haven't done one in quite a long
exactly.
time.
Yeah.
And also maybe Animal Crossing. I'd be surprised if they didn't do some kind of Animal Crossing.
Yeah. Also it's it's backwards compatible, which is good news. Although they did say in the trailer specifically, they say some games may not be backwards compatible. IGN hypothesizes that's probably the case for like where the remotes have specific peripherals, like games that require specific peripherals.
Yeah, there's
probably won't be backwards.
The original Switch has a weird infrared sensor on one of the Joy-Cons that only like 6 games ever use. So, and the new one does not appear to have a sensor.
It does have a red sensor similar to what a mouse might have.
Yes,
and there is like a little bit in the trailer where they sort of like slide along like a mouse. So that's also sort of a theorized way to use the controllers, that they have like a red sensor similar to the underside of a mouse.
Yeah.
So that might be a sort of the only thing I also think is maybe interesting is that in terms of specs, and NVIDIA employing it in September 2022 stated that the Switch 2 will likely use a new NVIDIA Tegra 2 T239 chip. Currently, the Switch uses a very dated Tegra X1 chip for all of our specs.
I mean, I think the speculation is that it's going to be pretty much like a PlayStation 4 esque power level, which makes sense because the Switch 1 is basically like a Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
So
and that's basically it. That's my Switch 2
That's an exciting update on the Switch.
You're welcome.
I'm going to make you the Switch expert. I know you don't want to be.
I don't want to be.
But I feel like
I don't want to buy one.
I feel like I'm going to guilt trip you into doing that because I think it's funny.
It'll be interesting to see what they do next, because the Switch has obviously been a huge success and the Wii was a huge success. But the Wii U, they the only other direct sequel, or at least the most recent one, since other than the Super Nintendo Entertainment System
Yeah.
was a complete fluff. They really messed that up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, and part of the issue with the Wii U as well was I feel like at launch when they first announced it, a lot of the games there weren't that many games announced.
There were. I mean, what really happened with the Switch? I mean, there were a number of issues, but what's clear
with the Wii U.
Oh, the Wii U. Sorry, yeah. Is that what's clear is that Nintendo is very scared that what happened with the Wii U will happen again, which is people weren't sure it was a new console.
Yeah.
Because when they announced it, they just showed off because the Wii U, for those who are unaware, it had like a box, like a normal console box that's next
Which
to the
looked
TV.
a lot like a Wii, by the way.
Yeah, it looks very nondescript. But the big thing was the controller had a screen in it, and there was ostensibly gameplay benefits from having a screen and then the TV as well. That's another issue. They never really proved that it was worthwhile. But when they originally showed it, they really focused on this screen controller. So people thought, oh, is this do I buy this controller and use it on my old Wii? They weren't sure it was a new console. So launching this with like a video that is just showing you that it's a new console. Look, here's the old Switch. Look, now it turns into a different machine. It's different. Look, it's bigger in these ways. It's got new things on it. It's definitely different. And then they just literally call it Switch 2, the most boring name they could have imagined. And even the logo is like the most boring way of having a 2. It's just the old logo with the most basic font 2 next to it. That's what the logo is. And it just shows they're really terrified that people will not realize it's a new console. So they've just gone all out to make it as clear as they possibly can that it is definitely a new console. So obviously I think they're a bit scared about it. You know, consoles, the thing that brings down consoles traditionally is hubris. There's so many examples of like big success followed by failure because they just get too big for their britches. Xbox 360 does well, the Xbox One tanks. The PlayStation 2 does well, the PlayStation 3 tanks. I mean, it's a bit more complicated than that, but that tends to happen. So the Wii does well, the Wii U tanks. So I think they're quite acutely aware of that. But yeah, shall we move on to our next item, which this was really one of the reasons we set this podcast up, which is just to talk about. I mean, the game most dear to many of our hearts. On the left, Disco Elysium, and more specifically, the fallout of what happened afterwards, which I am calling Zalmageddon.
Nice.
But to take us through the juiciest of drama is going to be Ed. Let's hear about the Zalmageddon.
Well, I'm going to be exploring the lay of the land when it comes to the Disco Elysium sequels and successors. So obviously there's this popular game comes out, and now we're in this situation where there appears to be like 1 million successors to this game. Like, what happened? How did that work? And I'm going to talk you through it, guys.
All right, here we go.
So yeah, I'm sure we'll probably talk about Disco Elysium properly at some point. Like, we're a socialist gaming podcast. It would be a crime not to do that.
Yeah.
Just to touch on it very quickly for the uninitiated, Disco Elysium was a 2019 RPG published by Zaum. It takes place...
Should say it's spelled ZA/UM, but people just call it Zaum.
Yes.
Or maybe Zaum? I think we're just going to go with Zaum.
I'm going to go with Zaum. It takes place in a city decades after a revolution rocked that society. You play a detective trying to solve a murder while also suffering from amnesia and trying to piece together who you are. And in doing so, you learn about the society you're in, how it got to where it is today, who holds power now, and so on. And the gameplay loop is mainly around conversations through which you uncover the answers to those questions. And you learn about the characters you're talking to and the various sort of ideologies and things that work in the setting. And it's a game with a very explicit focus on the society it's about. There's clear real-world analogies to Marxism and stuff like that. So people on the left love it. If you're on the left and you've not played Disco Elysium, are you really on the left?
Yeah.
No, but you
I say you're
play it.
not. I say you're not. That's my ideological position.
I haven't finished.
What? How have we had you on the podcast this level and not Renona?
I haven't finished it.
Again,
finished
we're going to be having a new person for the next
I'm gonna
episode.
play it on stream one day. It'll be a whole thing. I tried because I did start it on stream,
Oh, okay.
and then it just ran out of momentum because it's not a very good stream game. Is the problem?
I've seen a lot of people stream it.
I've seen a lot of people stream it, but it is they would also say it's not a
All
very good
right,
stream
all right,
game.
all right.
I agree with that. My girlfriend watches me play video games quite a lot, and she could not stand watching me play Disco Elysium. Apparently, it's just really boring to watch.
It's like watching someone read a novel.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I love watching people read novels, and frankly, if you don't agree, you're ideologically incorrect and a traitor to the movement.
That's all right.
Right.
Okay, so the crucial background bit of information, other than that Disco Elysium exists and is good and is on the left, is that the lead developer on Disco Elysium was a guy named Robert Kurvitz, and he, quote, involuntarily, end quote, left Zaum in 2022.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go too much into detail on that bit of it, but I can't help but recommend the People Make Games video on this.
Yes.
And we're not just saying that because they came to the first Games Transform. It explores from a variety of angles why Kurvitz left Zaum. And I'm not sure if we're going to include this in the podcast, Alex. I know you've got some questions about.
Look. We like the People Make Games guys. They're good guys. I have some reservations about that video. It's an excellent bit of reporting. Some of the conclusions I don't really agree with.
But it's a great video.
Yeah.
It lays out the facts. I would highly recommend that once you finish playing Disco Elysium, you then go and watch that video. It's very interesting. Fine. So we've got Zaum and we've got this Robert Kurvitz guy separately now. This is when things begin to get a bit messy. So before we go on, I do want to acknowledge that I got a lot of this info from Wesley Yim Pool's November 2024 report for IGN called The Wild Story Behind Disco Elysium's Spiritual Successors. So if you want to get more detail and quotes from the various people involved, check out that article.
Yeah.
Right. So initially, we're aware of 2 sequels to Disco Elysium in the works. One's being made by a new company founded by Robert Kurvitz, the lead writer and designer of Disco Elysium, alongside Disco Elysium's art director, Alexander Rostov. And this company is called Red Info. So we're aware that Red Info is making a sequel, and as far as we're aware, that's still in the works. So that's sequel number 1. The second sequel was being made by Zaum, the original developer and publisher of Disco Elysium, and it was being referred to as X7 was the code name for the game.
Yeah.
However,
I will say, just before you continue, Ed, I will point out, that only Zaum have the rights to Disco Elysium. So when we say we're referring to these as sequels, they're like spiritual sequels.
They're spiritual successors, yeah. Although some of the people involved in making these games would have at various points tried to claim the IP for themselves.
Yes, yeah.
So that's the second sequel, X7, being made by Zaum. Fair enough. Fairly straightforward so far.
Yeah.
In February last year, so 2024, X7 was cancelled. And we don't know at this point what Zaum are planning to do. So upon the cancellation of X7, the entire lead writing team was laid off by Zaum, including a couple of the lead creatives behind X7, Argo Tulik, who was apparently the last writer of Disco Elysium who was left at Zaum at that stage, and Dora Klingitz. They both left in February last year. And we're going to follow their journey that they took in 2024, because it's going to take you through a surprising number of Disco Elysium successes.
Yeah.
So they're laid off, they lose their jobs, February 2024, and they seem to land on their feet, because fairly swiftly they join another developer called Dark Math Games. Dark Math Games were founded by an early investor and executive producer of Disco Elysium, Carl Kender, in 2023. And they're making a game called XXX Night Shift, which is our third spiritual successor to Disco Elysium. So Tulik was hired as the director of XXX Night Shift, and Dora Klingitz was hired as the narrative director. Great. But this didn't last very long, because they both left in June 2024, apparently due to creative differences. However, Tulik has since alleged that the real reason they left was because Carl Kender showed him naked photos of Carl Kender's ex-wife to act as inspiration for characters in XXX Night Shift, which, if true, is obviously disgusting behaviour. Now, Carl Kender denies ever showing nude photos of his ex-wife, but he does admit that he did show photos of her fully clothed and wearing a bikini as inspiration for the developers. So that's all pretty sus.
I think it's also worth pointing out there is a trailer of XXX Night Shift that has been made.
Yeah, I think that might be the only trailer that's come out in
of any of these, yeah. But that trailer, from the looks of that trailer, you could quite easily describe it as sexy Disco Elysium. It has appears to have the same setup, with the text on the right hand side, and there's like aspects of this character's personality talking to them. But long story short, it's very sexy.
XXX.
Yeah, I think that's probably what that's referring to. So Yeah, that adds an extra level that this is for a specifically quite sexual game in itself.
Right. So now Tulik and Klingits leave Darkmath. And once again, they appear to land on their feet. They join yet another developer, their third of the year, who are also making a spiritual successor to Disco Elysium. This is a company called Longdue Games, which was founded by another company called Cogrammer. It's mainly made up of former Disco Elysium staff. And so, yeah, congratulations. This is our fourth Disco Elysium spiritual sequel that we're talking about today. And this one is so far unnamed as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
So they were taken on as consultants for Longdue in summer 2024. But once again, things apparently didn't work out because they both resigned in September 2024. And finally, Tulik and Klingits decided to branch out on their own, and they founded a studio called Summer Eternal, which has also announced that they are making our fifth and so far final Disco Elysium spiritual successor. So that's the broad outline of the story. We've got 5 successors to Disco Elysium, although the Zaun one has been cancelled as far as we know. But there are a couple more dramatic aspects to this story that I want to take you through before you're all caught up. The first is that the last 3 sequels that I talked about there, the one from Darkmath, the one from Longdue, and the one from Summer Eternal, were all announced on the same day, the 11th of October, 2024. It's not clear how that happened. I mean, I would guess that the first developer, which was Longdue, announced their game and the other 2 panicked and decided that they should tell the world that they were there too, making a spiritual successor. But it's also worth remembering, I just said Summer Eternal, the people that co-founded that, left their previous role in September 2024. And this announcement happened on the 11th of October 2024. They'd been out of their jobs at Longdue for less than 2 weeks by the time that they announced that they're making a spiritual successor to Disco Elysium. So I would imagine they're probably not terribly far into development at that stage, which also implies that they must have rushed to announce it.
Yeah.
The second dramatic aspect that we haven't touched on yet is the legal action. So Cogrammer, which like I said is the owner of Longdue Games, has taken legal action against Tulik and Klingits. Apparently, it's said in their contracts that they were not allowed to work for another game studio, or including ones that they themselves founded, for 6 months after their contract with Cogrammer ended. Cogrammer has pointed out that if Tulik and Klingits had signed something to confirm that they didn't have any of Cogrammer's IP and that they wouldn't talk to the press about Cogrammer, then that clause could have been dropped. And apparently Tulik and Klingits have refused to do that. Of course, I don't know if that's true. I don't know what's true in this. But this went to court, like this went in front of a judge, and Cogrammer have won the case. So consequently, Tulik and Klingits are unable to do anything with Summer Eternal until at least 6 months have passed after they left Longdue. So that's where they currently are. Like, we're still within that 6-month period. Yeah. They're not allowed to be working on any game, let alone a Disco Elysium sequel. So that's the first bit of legal action. Zaun, remember them? The original developers of Disco Elysium. They're also taking legal action against Tulik, although they stress that it's merely a legal notice. It's not a lawsuit. Zaun alleges that he breached confidentiality laws, that he's infringed on their copyright, and that he breached his contract with them. They say they want him to delete confidential material that he apparently still has from when he worked at Zaun. And it's been alleged that Tulik, when he left Zaun, took a USB stick with him, which contained a 20-minute playable version of X7, and that he showed this demo to both Darkmath and Longdue. That's the claim that Zaun makes, and I believe Tulik denies that claim. That's where we are. We've got 5 sequels, one from the lead developer of Disco Elysium's new company, Red Info, one from Zaun, which called X7, which has been cancelled, and then the two of the leads from X7 then worked on 3 other spiritual sequels in 2024. One called Triple X Night Shift for Darkmath, one for Longdue, and then one for a company they co-founded called Summer Eternal. And all of those ones, aside from X7, are apparently still in production, although, as I say, Summer Eternal legally has the pause for at least 6 months. Who knows which of these games, how many of these games, any of these games will come to fruition, and which ones of them will be worthy successes. But hopefully we get at least one Disco Elysium worthy sequel out of this. And if any of these games are as dramatic as the story of how they're made, then we've got a real Apocalypse Now / Heart of Darkness situation on our hands. Yeah, that's the catch up. That's where we're at. In the meantime, go play Disco Elysium if you haven't. Watch the People Make Games video on Zaun v Kurvitz, and probably read the Yin Pool 2024 report for IGN on this. all these splits. It's the most left-wing thing I've ever seen. And frankly, I'm excited to split off from Red Barrels and create my own smaller, ideologically pure podcast. Thanks very much.
I don't think it's possible to imagine a more ideologically pure podcast than this one. So I don't know if that's really going to be possible. Certainly, I think yours would be a horrific deviation from any kind of leftist project. And I'm just going to say, preemptively that you're a traitor to the movement. So yeah, I mean, it's been said a million times, but it's incredibly apt for the Disco Elysium games left wing is that to have just devolved into these weird splitting factions. And I do think it's worth pointing out that I'm not saying sure we should say we endorse it per se, because we still don't really know anything what happened. But I believe Argo Chulik has a GoFundMe to raise money for his legal defense. If he seems like the only person you can directly give money to if you are really desperate to give money to someone in thanks for Disco Elysium. So why not give it a go? But yeah, I think that's going to be it for Disco Elysium. We are going to, I'm sure, have updates in the future. I do kind of want this to be the Disco Elysium Updates podcast. In part, I believe the YouTubers NoClip are going to have...
We'd like to take this opportunity to announce our own spiritual successor to Disco Elysium.
Unbelievable. Final entry into it, the most ideologically correct sequel to Disco Elysium. I do believe the YouTubers NoClip are prepping a documentary. They do really great documentaries where they enter into game studios, and they are a bit hagiographical, but they're still pretty fun, and they are apparently priming one that is looking into this very subject. So I suspect when that comes out, there'll be another update with all the weird drama that comes out of that. And that'll be fun. That'll be fun. We love the drama. Speaking of drama. Our final... We have to talk about it. It includes billionaires humiliating themselves as well as weirdo, incredibly... unclean streamers also humiliating themselves. Mm-hmm. So let's hear about all of that from Sophie.
So I'm very, very excited to talk about the Elon Musk Asmongold situation. Obviously, people have been, I guess maybe some people have heard of it as the Elon Musk Path of Exile situation. It's the Elon Musk Path of Exile Asmongold situation, okay? And I just love this story so much. I love it so much because I just think that Elon Musk is so pathetic and desires the approval of one particular group in the world and has done the exact opposite thing in order to earn that approval. So what did he do? Let me tell you. So basically, okay, Elon Musk has this history of claiming to be very good at video games, unusually good at video games, which, like, honestly, I think even if he weren't very good at video games, supposedly, right? I think a lot of, like, gamers, especially the ones that he wants the approval of, I feel like they would approve of the fact that he's a very rich, prominent person and also likes video games just enough. But they would also probably be like, you're very busy and rich and smart. Yeah, exactly. You probably don't have time for video games. I get it. But no, instead, like, Elon Musk has insisted on being very good at video games. Apparently,
people like that Henry Cavill plays video games. We don't need Henry Cavill to be the greatest gamer of all time.
We're just glad that he plays video games, right? That he respects it as an art form.
My theory is that he is obsessed with the humiliation he got when he posted his Elden Ring build.
Right, yes.
And he has been trying to make up for that ever since.
Elon, not Henry.
No, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk,
for those who don't know, Elon Musk posted his build, and despite the fact that, I mean, it was like a high level.
It was a high level.
Yeah, it was a high level. He or someone, we'll get into that, had been playing that character for quite a long time. It was just ludicrous. He had two shields. His Estus flask wasn't even on his D-pad. Yeah. He had heavy armor that he would take off when he needed to do light rolls. Yeah. It was the most ridiculous thing anyone had ever seen. And I've actually seen people have used it as like a challenge to like complete Elden Ring with Elon Musk's terrible build, and it's like it's extremely. It makes it even harder. Yeah. So I suppose that actually proves he's a real gamer because he made the game so much harder for himself with his shit build.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. So basically, he's got this history of claiming to be very good at video games and then proving himself false. But this particular example with Path of Exile is just like so hilarious. So like, for those of you who don't know, I don't really know that much about the game myself, except for the fact that it is notoriously complicated. It is notoriously complex and difficult and requires a lot of grinding and leveling. It is like literally it's notorious for its skill tree, which is like impenetrable.
Yeah.
I did take a look at it, and it reminds me of the Final Fantasy X sphere grid.
Oh, yeah.
And I fucking hated that. So I'm not going anywhere near this game. I don't even need to pretend to be good at it because I'm not going to even play it probably. So basically, obviously, Path of Exile, the new one comes out, and he claims to be really, really good at the game, which is his pattern to do. Clearly, he wants to impress these like gamer bros. Okay, but not only does he claim to be very good at the game, okay, not even, does he claim to be, maybe like, I don't know, reasonably good or talk about his high level character or whatever. Not only that, he claims to be the number 7th in the world player of Path of Exile.
Well, he doesn't just claim it. He is, technically, his character is on the leaderboard.
Yes. So his character is, quote unquote, right, supposedly is on the leaderboard as the 7th in the world. And like everyone's made this joke already, but like if you're cheating in a test in high school, you don't cheat so you get 100%. You cheat so that you get like 60% and then no one looks at you, right? So he's literally done this in the most hilarious way. So basically became very obvious that when he bragged about, playing Path of Exile to this like almost expert level, like you'd literally have to make a career out of it at this point. People were understandably quite suspicious. I think he also did a live stream at some point also being like, oh, here's my game. Here's me proving that I'm playing my game. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that he has no idea how to play the game. One of which was that he apparently ignores these items called chaos orbs. And apparently they're like one of the most valuable items that you could possibly pick up in the game. Yeah. But he just ignores them in favor of a much lower item, like lower level item. He also, in this same like gameplay footage as well, he describes gear as like being good or bad based on the minimum level requirement for the gear. Let alone the fact that he has like one of the most important items in the game, which is like these particular gloves, these enchanted gloves. Yeah. He's like, yeah, they're actually not that good though, because you can use them as soon as you're like level 27 or whatever. Yeah. And everyone's like, what the fuck? That's not. It's the best item in the game, right? Like uncontroversially, it's the best item in the game. Also, really hilariously as well, he's like playing in a set of maps that are labeled Elon's maps, which is clearly the maps that this person he's definitely hired to play the game for him. He clearly set these maps aside for him so that he was like, you definitely can't die here. Definitely can't die here. Like, here's the maps that you showcase when you're live streaming this game and proving to everyone that you can play this fucking game, okay? So, when Asmongold comes into this, so all this news breaks about him very obviously faking his way to number 7th player in the world of Path of Exile, which is a full-time job. Basically, Asmongold doesn't cover it.
First, can we get a brief primer on
a brief
unfortunately who Asmongold is?
Asmongold is a human trash fire, okay? He's a disgusting human being, both morally and also practically. Like, the most famous thing about Asmongold is that he used to use a rat corpse as an alarm clock in his room because it would start smelling when the sun would land on it, and that's when he knew when to wake up. It's the most disgusting story I think I've ever heard about a human being.
I mean, I think you can see in his streams that he apparently, like, his gums were started bleeding, and he just wiped the blood on the wall.
Yeah, so there's blood on the wall, and people are like, what's the blood on the wall? And he's like, oh, I just, like, when I'm sleeping, my gums bleed, so I just wipe the blood off of my gums and then wipe it on the wall, and he just doesn't clean it off. Also, famously, during a live stream, there was literally a cockroach crawling on him for, like, a good, like, 10 seconds. And when he notices it, he just, like, nonchalantly grabs it and then puts it back on the floor. Which is incredible. So, incredible human being and how disgusting and awful he is. He's also said reprehensible things about Palestine as well.
Yeah, he's
saying that
horrible.
Palestinians come from an inferior culture. Just a horrible human being. So I have no qualms criticizing this person. So Asmongold comes into this picture because he's a fan of Elon Musk. Okay, he likes Elon Musk, and this is also the type of story that he usually covers. He's a Twitch streamer. He didn't used to cover politics as much. He mostly used to do gaming news. And this would be like his bread and butter usually, but he didn't cover the story when it happened. So people are like, what's the deal with that? And basically, Asmongold follows Elon Musk on Twitter. Elon Musk follows Asmongold back. And Elon Musk likes Asmongold. He's said this himself. And Asmongold has also defended Elon Musk in the past. So they clearly have like a gross parasocial relationship with each other. So when this story broke, people were kind of baffled by the fact that Asmongold wasn't covering it. Eventually, the pressure got so much where Asmongold did cover it. And then when Elon Musk, I believe, was like kind of passive aggressive about it on Twitter, Asmongold said like, okay, so post proof, like post like verifiable proof that this is your character, that you know how to play this game, and I will start streaming on Twitter from now on. He's like, I will stream on Twitter every single day from now on if you prove that this is your character, like beyond the shadow of a doubt, if you prove that this is your character. And then Elon Musk unfollows Asmongold on Twitter. Just unfollows him on Twitter. And it's just my favorite story ever because, like, can you imagine being so pathetic that you crave the approval of not only these, like, sweaty gamer bros who you're, like, extra not going to get the approval of because you cheated your way to the top. Like, that's literally the most, like, despicable thing, especially amongst these gamer bros. Like, but also being so pathetic that you crave the approval of Asmongold.
It's unbelievable.
Asmon rat as an alarm clock gold.
trying to, you know, so I think so often you see these billionaires who are just so pathetic, and you just think, if I had that money, you just be above this shit, right?
Like,
if I had why would
money,
I care if Asmongold liked me if I had that much money?
I'd turn into a recluse. I would have infinite self-esteem. My money could buy my happiness and my self-esteem. I wouldn't need this. It's so bizarre, and I love it. It's just so pathetic. It's just so much. I think I've probably gotten a couple of details incorrect there, but I think I got the most important ones correct. And either way, I don't care because it's a funny story about two stupid, just insane, ridiculous characters. So I don't really care.
Maybe it proves that capitalism makes everyone miserable. Like, you can literally win at capitalism, and you can still be craving the approval of a man who uses a rat as an alarm clock. Like, if it's not making him happy, who is it making happy? Who's this for, guys? Maybe we should address this.
Maybe. You know, we'll, after the revolution, when we've got Elon Musk at gunpoint, we'll re-educate him like they like China.
In a video game.
Like, I think it's after the revolution. We'll re-educate him like the Chinese did the last Chinese emperor, and he became very contrite. So we'll just have him, and he'll be sitting in a room saying, I can't believe I wanted to impress this weirdo. You know, I saw that apparently someone checked, and it seems that he was officially playing his character on Path of Exile while he was live on camera at the Trump inauguration.
You're joking!
Apparently.
I mean, to be fair, it's not the worst thing that Musk did at the Trump inauguration.
It's true.
Oh, yeah.
Sadly not.
Maybe that's what caused the whole thing.
Yeah,
like,
you know
oh
what?
God, I need to distract them. I'm going to get found out.
I would not be surprised, like, if that's his motivation of just like, I need everyone to stop talking about my Path of Exile fail. I guess I'll just throw out a Nazi salute.
It's so true. Better a Nazi than a fake gamer. That's what I've always thought, and I suppose I agree with him.
Roman salute?
Fake gamers.
I'm joking, by the way. It's obviously not a Roman salute. It's a Nazi salute.
It's a Nazi salute. I think we can have that as the official position of the Red Barrels podcast. Agreed. Okay, good. I'm afraid our checks haven't come through yet, so maybe for the next episode we'll be talking about how much we love Elon Musk. But you'll have to
the approval of Asmongold.
Of course. You know what? If that check, that check's got to be pretty big. That's got to be pretty big for me to start liking Asmongold. But what can I say? There's a number. If you get it right, I'll do it.
For Asmongold, I'm sorry. Maybe Elon Musk, but like Asmongold, no.
Look, I'm just saying.
If he approved of me, I think I would die. I think I would rather die.
That's pretty fair. I mean, I don't, there's plenty of people in this world that I don't really like, but I can see the appeal, why people like them.
There's two of us in the room right now.
Oh. But Asmongold, I'm just like, why does anyone like he doesn't seem like he's an interesting guy to watch play video games even.
I think it's
just on a
the
basic
Destiny
level
effect, right? Of just like, oh, he's contrarian and people enjoy that. But
I guess. Destiny, look, I don't like Destiny either. I don't want to get this too much into a Twitch streamer chat. Yeah, no. I don't like Destiny either, but I can see why people would like him. I can see see the appeal. But Asmongold, I'm just like, he's just the most like disgusting human I've ever seen in my life.
One of my chatters, Alex OK, if you're listening, said he looks like a nutcracker, and now I can never get rid of that image.
It does look like a nutcracker.
It does look like a nutcracker, yeah.
Well.
Thanks, Alex.
We unfortunately kind of have to wrap up. We've got external forces forcing us from the premises. The police are outside. They're coming.
It's Asmongold. He's going to kill us.
The Trumpist death squads at Asmongold's command have come to claim our souls. So maybe there won't be a next episode, but But assuming there is one, we'd love to have you there. For now, you can follow us on Twitter, owned by that lovely man we were just talking about. Red Barrels Pod, that's on there. Blue Sky. Look, Blue Sky is kind of objectively morally better, but it's still just full of libs, you know. So what can I say? We still use Twitter, all right? We live in dark. We live in dark times. It's redbarrelspodcast.bsky.social, all right? Please follow us on there. And I mean, I should say we would love to get more reach, get more people listening. So we would humbly ask that you share us on those platforms and also review us on Spotify and iTunes. You know, some might say we're a 5-star podcast. That's not for me to say. I'm just saying that's a theoretical possibility for you out there.
Have you rated our podcast on those apps?
No, I haven't. I've got more respect for myself.
Oh, I have.
Oh, I'm going to go do that. I forgot.
Okay, literally genuine. I also had just forgotten to do it myself, which of course makes me ludicrous. But what can I say? It happened. Also, I'm sure you enjoyed it.
I'm the only true Red Barrels fan.
That's true. It's true. Well, that's not true because we do have one other fan who is Brilliant Drink, who provided our wonderful theme song that I'm sure you've enjoyed. But as I said, we're hoping to move to a more regular schedule, maybe in 2 weeks. I don't want to make any cast iron promises, but that's what we'd like to aim for. I should say that we have our own social medias. You can find me at Alex Dean, AlexDuin. If you just search for that on any of those platforms, you'll find me. Ed?
You can find me at Not a Lemon on Blue Sky, and you can find me at Still Not a Lemon on X, formerly known as Twitter.
That's ironic because that's kind of like chronologically the wrong way around. But
yeah, it's order of preference, I guess.
So.
I mean, I'm also on the what's it called, the decentralized one.
Oh, right. What, Mastodon?
Mastodon. I'm also on Mastodon. Wow. I don't remember what my login is.
If
anyone's interested, let us know. I'll give you my Mastodon.
And you can find me primarily on Twitch, twitch.tv/SoFreely, SOFREELY. And yeah, I think that's it. Sorry, you can cut it off there.
Okay.
Instagram, SoFreely Media. Thank you so much.
Well, then that really is it. I think that's us for today's episode. We will see you in the near future. It's all coming out. This is 2025, the year. Well, I mean, it's also probably the year of the rise of fascism, but it's also the year of Red Barrels podcast. And that's more important. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.